Hey everyone, James Reeves, TFB TV. It's my honor to have my good friend Ian McCollum on the program. You guys, of course, know Ian McCollum, the legend himself and author. And that's what we're talking about today because Ian has been wildly successful with his reference series of books. It started out with what I would call as a Pensacola chassis pot to famous.
French military rifles, because that was my personal collection. And then the second one we did was on Chinese military pistols from the Warlord era, which was kind of just an opportunistic thing. We got access to a collection of a couple hundred of the things, and they're super weird and cool. So we did a book that was more of a catalog. Like, there's as much reference material as possible in that book, but there just isn't a lot of information out there. Done a little bit of a sidetrack with some coffee table stuff, but I have another proper reference book coming out. It's actually live on Kickstarter now on Finnish small arms. That's called Forged in Snow. The book covers everything from pistols to light machine guns. And I did not try to cover every foreign firearm that came in and saw use in Finland without being altered in some way, because that would take 3 extra volumes.
Tell us about Forged in Snow. What's it going to be about? What was your inspiration?
It's a couple of things. First off, ever since I first visited Finland, I kind of fell in love with the country. They're a really cool group of people with a really interesting history. It's a very young country. Finland only gained its independence a little over 105 years ago. And it's not like one of those countries that was a kingdom for 1,000 years into the past, like Sweden. It was just like the podunk province of someone else, either the Russians or the Swedes, until the end of World War I. So they become independent and they have to create a standalone military, and then within just a couple of decades they get invaded by the Soviet Union, and they don't quite win, but they don't entirely lose either. They come in a very, very respectable second place and maintain their sovereignty. And then kind of continue to do the same thing through the Cold War, where they're one of the only Eastern Bloc countries that wasn't essentially, like, they're the only Baltic country that wasn't occupied outright by the Soviets. To my mind, the small arms that they use to do this are really interesting. They've got a bunch of cool stories.
Tell me something interesting, like for the gun nerds out there who maybe you're not so much history guys. We want to hear like some nitty gritty about some cool Finnish guns. Like, what'd you learn doing this project that would be neat to convey to the audience?
So a couple things. For some of you guys will already know this, obviously, but Finland used predominantly the Mosin Nagant, but they never manufactured a Mosin Nagant receiver, not a single one. Every single Mosin that the Finns had was either captured from the Russians or purchased from everyone in Europe through the 1920s and 1930s, and then refurbished and rebuilt, sometimes multiple times. So they took the existing base of like the worst bolt rifle out there and turned it into one of the better bolt rifles out there. By the time you get to the M39s, like the end of the Finnish Mosin evolution, they've turned it into, like, they have turned that sow's ear into a silk purse. After the war, they do a similar thing with the AK, where they never actually got a technical license for the AK from the Russians. They reverse engineered the gun themselves and then put it into production and ended up with what's widely regarded as one of the highest quality AKs out there on the market. I think one of the funny things that I discovered over the course of working on this book is we're all familiar with Valmet's semi-auto civilian AKs, and everyone thinks like the civilian version of the military AK and the military's AK is great. Well, Valmet had this like recurring habit of every time they would build something for the Finnish Army and it would get rejected, they'd just turn around and sell it commercially. So their stamped receiver was rejected by the Army after a couple of years. It goes on to be a commercial project. The folding stock design they use for their commercial AKs is the one that was rejected by the military for not being good enough. The entire M71 rifle was rejected by the military. And so Valmet turned it around and made it a commercial project.
The most historically significant Finnish small arm is what?
Ooh, that is a tricky question, because the thing is, the Finnish small arms, in a way kind of like French, which maybe explains part of my interest in them, didn't really get used by anybody outside of Finland. They never really exported any of their guns, except in very small quantities here and there. And so Finnish rifles, Finnish small arms, served in the Winter War and the Continuation War against the Soviet Union, and then almost nowhere else. Finnish forces have deployed into UN missions in places like Lebanon and Kosovo and taken their Valmets with them. But like in a wider historical scale, I think you could pretty easily argue that none of the Finnish guns have any huge historical significance outside of Finland. The most recognized, respected one, it would be the Suomi submachine gun.
Oh, sure.
And not just because it's named Finland, like Suomi is Finland in Finnish.
Oh.
Like the gun's named after the country, but it has become an iconic weapon. It was designed entirely from the ground up by a Finn, Aimo Lahti. It served extremely well. It has a great reputation in Finland and a great reputation worldwide. Just a couple countries bought them, but no one ever really used them much in combat.
What would your favorite Finnish small arm be?
I have a couple. I am a huge fan of the Suomi. It's a really fun gun to shoot, and it's a really good submachine gun.
Tell me a little about it. Let's say I don't know about the Suomi.
Okay, so it is an early submachine gun. Initial development is 1920s. Final pattern is 1931. So we're talking, more than a decade before World War II. It is an all-milled gun. It uses a 71-round drum magazine, has a high rate of fire. Very reliable, very controllable because it has a combination of heavy and high rate of fire, but with a long enough receiver that you don't get a lot of kick out of each cycling of the bolt. So comfortable, accurate.
When you're making a book, walk me through the process from conception all the way to production and tell me where we're at right now with this one.
All right, so where we're at right now, the manuscript is done. It is running on Kickstarter for pre-order. We still have some editing work to do. We have some stretch goals for some additional content that if we pass, I will be writing.
Where did this start with you? Really, where was that flicker, the spark?
Mosins. We got a ton of surplus Mosins into the United States years and years and years ago. And Finnish Mosins came into the country around several times in several batches, but we were getting generic Russian World War II Mosins out of Ukraine, actually, at the same time that we were also getting Finnish Mosins out of Finland. And the massive number of standard Russian ones drove the price of Mosins really low, like well under $100. And just because a regular Mosin was that cheap, it drove the price of all the Finnish ones down. And the Finnish guns are way rarer. There are a lot of really interesting variations to them, and they were available really cheap at the time. And that's what first got me interested, is like, okay, yeah, there's all this normal standard 9130, whatever. But then here's all these odd Finnish versions. That's really interesting. Finland's a lot cooler than the Soviet Union. These guns look pretty interesting. You know what would be a really cool book to do? Like I've gone to Finland a couple times now. I've started to experience the country. I really like it. I've found good reference material, just most of it's not in English. Let's do an English language book on this. I had found good information. There's this great, really detailed, multi-volume Finnish book that covers all their military arms up into the 80s. And armed with having that kind of good information, I figured I should do more than just Mosins. But also a lot of the other Finnish arms are available in the United States. The Finnish pistols are here. The bolt-action rifles, the Mosins, of course, are. We have a lot of the semi-auto Valmet rifles that are here, and I wanted to be able to cover those. I've got some information. Where can I find the guns to actually take pictures? And we reached out to the Finnish Army Museum, the Sotamuseo, and we're able to make some good connections there. And James Reeves, my photographer, partner in Headstamp Publishing, he and I took a trip to Finland for about a week, spent several days photographing in this fantastic underground storage bunker of the Finnish Army Museum.
Yeah, what's that like? I mean, you show up and you're like, hey, here we are. And they're like, yeah, Mr. McCollum, we've got everything set up for you. I mean, is it a pain in the ass or is it, I imagine it's a grind. I mean, you're probably,
It is massive grind. Photography is not easy. In this case, we had told them what guns we wanted in advance. They'd pulled them all out, pallets of guns. We show up at a base and they're like, cool, grab your stuff. We go into this little shed and there's a truck-sized elevator. You go down the elevator shaft into the underground storage bunkers where we're not allowed to take pictures of the bunkers themselves because the Finns still take that sort of thing very seriously, into an area that they've set up where we can put out some lights, set up the camera. It's cold and damp down in there, and we take pictures of guns for 3 or 4 days. We then packed up. We went to Saco, and they had given us access to some of their reference collections, so we did a bunch of photography there as well. And that was the primary photography. This was 3 or 4 years ago. Like this has been an ongoing project for me for quite a while. We've ended up doing some additional photography in some other places as well. But that Finnish Army Museum was really key because it got me access to some prototypes and some really rare variations that just don't exist in private collections in the US or in Finland.
Were there any guns that were a unicorn or were like a Grail gun where it's like, man, I really hope we can photograph this? Or were they all equally accessible?
No, honestly, there were kind of like a lot of those, and the Army Museum had virtually all of them. Finnish snipers in particular are, like, the Finns never had a really good sniper program. They had a lot of very short development timeline sniper rifles. And so those things are all extremely, like, they were extremely rare to begin with. You've got groups of these, patterns where they only made 11 guns or 3 guns. And so trying to find those things is normally next to impossible. But the one place they survive is the Army's reference collection. So getting access there was hugely helpful and covered a lot of the material that we were going to.
If you could keep one of the guns that you photographed, which one would it have been?
All right, so that's a tricky question. As you're good at those. So there are some Mosins that are super rare that would be cool, but they're not that much different from other Mosins. Semi-auto, like a full auto Valmet, an RK-62 military rifle would be awesome, but it's not that different from the semi-auto. What I have never been able to find in the US that I would love to have is an LS-26 light machine gun. I like light machine guns, they're just cool. And I think there are a couple of those guns in the US, but I've never come across one. And that would probably be my pick. It's an old school mag-fed 7.62x54 chunky light machine gun on a bipod.
Yeah.
No one used it outside of Finland, and none of them, I mean, a couple of them, I think, at some point through Sam Cummings, probably got into the US, but extremely rare. I've seen a parts kit once.
What was the most challenging part about making this book?
Getting good access to information, especially on the more modern guns. There's a time period where they're too modern to have been written about. The military can often still be hesitant to talk about them much it's not really that they need to be secret, but everyone in militaries worldwide usually has this attitude of better safe than sorry. Rather than maybe get in trouble for saying something that's probably fine, I'm just going to say nothing. So yeah, some of the more modern stuff was probably the hardest to get information on.
And then what was for you, the most interesting and exciting part to write?
I really enjoyed getting deep into the parts of tracing where Finnish Mosins came from, because they were acquiring guns from all over the place. And you have just this myriad of weird random markings until you start recognizing what each thing actually means. And then you get to a point, like I have 2 rifles in my own collection where I can look at them and I can say, this rifle was purchased by the Finns from Italy in 1926, because before that, the Italians got it as war reparations from the Austro-Hungarians, who had in turn captured it from the Russians and then rechambered it for 8mm Mannlicher. Like, once you decode some of the details, not just markings, but like what components went into the guns, you can recognize like, oh, the light opens up on where this rifle came from. And seeing not just one individual rifle, but seeing the whole development program kind of open up like that, to me was really interesting, and that was one of my favorite parts.
There are people watching this video that are right now saying, okay, I would like to get a copy of this book. How do they do that?
It's on Kickstarter. Hopefully, he's got a link in the description text below, but if not, if you Google Kickstarter Forged in Snow, it'll pop right up. If you go over to the Forgotten Weapons YouTube channel right now, we're filming this in advance, but I will be making it very difficult for subscribers to my channel to miss this Kickstarter. So there should be a number of links available around. But title is Forged in Snow.
Let me ask you this. Why would I do a Kickstarter? Why would I not just wait for the book to come out and buy it?
So we have an exclusive cover for Kickstarter backers that I think is really cool. I'm calling it the Ice cover. And that's something we typically do on our Kickstarters as a thank you for people who pledge in early. We have an exclusive cover. The book is also discounted about 10% from what it'll be at retail. The reason we do it is largely to figure out how many copies we need to print and then to fund that printing. And we've got some stretch goals in there. So if there's a lot of interest and it justifies a large print run, we've got some cool extras We can improve the physical qualities of the book. We can add some more material to it.
If he gets 1,000 Kickstarters, I said I would write the foreword, and then if he gets 2,000, you get a shirtless picture of Ian actually in the back book cover. Ian, it's an honor. Thank you so much for being on the program.
My
Guys,
pleasure.
it's an honor having you watching TFB TV. Make sure you subscribe. Thank you very much. Take care.